Okay. Thank you very much. So we continue our artist talks with the third project, which is part of the exhibition Us and Them. And I'm happy to have here with me Eddo Hartmann, whose project Setting the Stage about the North Korean capital Pyongyang is part of the exhibition. Eddo, you are a Dutch photographer, born 1973 and living in Amsterdam.
Still do, yes.
Good. And as far as I know, you've been working for newspapers and magazine, but your work evolved more and more into, long-term projects and stories rather than the short rhythm of media representation.
Yeah, it was also a bit a sign of the times. I used to be a commercial photographer, then I went to more editorial photography. But slowly the demands for these kind of stories reclined. It became to be very short stories. Everybody's interested. That's the thing you can do online like this. And then I focused more on long-term documentary projects. Mm-hmm. And this is one of them. So. Yeah,
and this is the one we want to speak about. So please go ahead and maybe you start with what brought you to the idea to visit Pyongyang, because of course all of us know that it's not something where you just buy a ticket and go there. So it's a special place and getting access, and maybe you share something on this.
Yes,
so of course you can show images while
let's have the first image. It's just that's my name and the title of the project, Setting the Stage. So you have my name and the project. But before I go into this project, just before I came here a few days ago, I was thinking, maybe we should change the way I present this. I really want to take you on a small visual journey. How do I work as an image maker? So. It's very clear why the topic of North Korea is in this exhibition, because obviously it's about the communist country, the last that's so strong within this realm. And so that's very clear, but I want to show something, why I started out and how I work as an image maker. To do that, I want to show you some images. I want to show you 4 images, and I won't say anything about these images, but they're very important to me. And they will bring at the end the answer why I went to Pyongyang. So what I want you to do is I will show you these images one by one and go back again, and then you're going to tell me what you see, instead of that I'm going to tell what's happening. Because I'm a visual, I have to tell my stories in a visual way, so I see how it comes down. It's very silent. Seems to work. So obviously I'm a big fan of Salvatore, which we just saw. So can we have a mic? And I have a question for him. Okay then.
Welcome back.
Yes, we know that you are a researcher, and we know I start to do the interviewing here. I also know that you're image maker. So what do you see here in these images? If you just judge it on a visual level, you just go for it in a visual way.
On a visual level?
Yeah,
just
what do
visual.
you see? What do you think? What's happened here? What's the story? What's the backstory?
Well, that's hard to say. I mean, visually, of course... I mean, the first impression I had when I started to look at them is very much like some kind of staged environment that got abandoned. So something that was like set up in a way, and then the leftovers of it, or something, an happening or whatever.
Some kind of happening?
Yeah,
leftovers?
Because I wouldn't say it's an abandoned place, because I mean you see that it's pretty well conserved anyway.
Yeah.
But there is all this rubbish in a way, or like all this noise in the image. and maybe something that was kind of made leftover of something.
Okay. Is there anybody else who feels like I really want to have somebody else that reflects on it? Like, Paula, can you have the mic? What do you see here? That's the other artist over here. That you're gonna have a talk in after I'm done.
Maybe in a more metaphorical way. I was thinking about memories and histories of people, stories of lives.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Leftovers.
Leftovers.
But powerful leftovers.
Powerful leftovers.
Because I think there's a discrepancy between the decor, the style and the decor of the spaces you photographed, and then the leftovers come in like a wave. It's like it's like a flood. They came in like so. They're very powerful and disturbing anything that the decor associates, like something that is clean, neat.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, in this house I lived until I was 14. It's the house where I live with my parents. And I fled this place to get rid of the abuse by my father. So I left and never returned in 20 years. But you can see that part of it was very beautiful, but in some way part of it was also horrible. 20 years, I didn't go back. I left this place one night in 1987, run away with my brother and mother in the night, and we were homeless for a few months because we were completely isolated. I never saw my father again, which I don't know if he's still alive, but I want to keep it like this. And 20 years later, around 2008, I got a phone call from old neighbors and said, Eddo, but we know you live there, but your father seems to be gone. The doors are open, which have never happened, so maybe you should go back. So I grabbed my camera, somewhere in October 1987, 2008, ran there, called my mother, called my brother, they also came, and I went in there. But nothing, really nothing could compare me for what I saw there. Because I saw there are more images, but just to keep it a bit short, I just keep it by these 4. It was a flood of paper, and it was like an archaeology find. You could really see that the bottom was very old, because it consists of my own toys, my own letters, my own life. And the higher the layer of papers were, the top layer were the newest layer. So just by walking around, I could kind of dissect the history of what happened over there. And it was a certain kind of time warp. Time stood still. For instance, this is the bedroom of my father. And above it, you can see a small white patch. That's a drawing I gave to him when I was 10 years old, but it was still there. I took these pictures, I thought this is a kind of visual document for me personally, because this, of course, I never planned that it would happen to me at all. It just happened. And I also thought, I took the pictures, but I didn't think anybody would be interested in it, because it's just images of an empty space with a lot of junk. So I think, nah. Then a friend of mine, a few years later, and she walked to this image, I'm going to do the same thing, and she said to me, the top part is beautiful, but the bottom part is really horrible. And then I said, that's it. Now I can make a book out of it, because in a visual way, it explained how I felt there. Part of it was beautiful, but another part was really horrible. And I found a scholar who writes a lot about memory and how your brain works. Because my mother and brother had a completely different story for what I had when I lived there. We had the same experience, but the stories were different. So I learned that somebody's memory brain work. It's not like a digital hard disk that when you have once the memory on it, it stays the same. It changes. So I made a book. I wrote something about it. And then my photographic life was completely distorted. I worked on completely different things before. That's why I show it. It was a very personal story, but I got very much interested in places with a story, a location. It's like sitting in somebody's living room and you never met the person, but you know who he is by just looking at the stuff that is around. And that became the key for the next project that's also part of this festival. This book came a bit by claim to fame, national and international, because it was one of the first time, or there's a lot of stories about domestic abuse, but not visually told from the inside. Usually a photographer or an image documentary maker will go to a place and goes back again and tells a story, but this was told from the inside out. So the impact was differently. But I was at a certain point very much tired of telling my own story, such a personal story, and want to make it much bigger. So what are places that tell stories? What are locations? What are big locations? So you have countries, but you also have cities. So I started to look at my own city. This is the city of Amsterdam. I live somewhere in the top left corner of Amsterdam. If you look at 17th century pictures of Amsterdam, then you clearly can see how the structure, how it's made up. So you see all canals in circles, and these are made because it was a kind of castle. You had to defend your city. So every time they built a wall with a canal, but the city got bigger, another canal, and we have, like you know, awful lot of water, so that worked really well. And you see the wall on the outside. And the Dutch are very much into trading goods. And think, okay, for defense it doesn't work anymore, but for trade it works. We can ship all the stuff through the canals. So just by looking at a city, you can tell its story. The story of its inhabitants and the story of, because it's a capital, the story of the country itself. So I was thinking, are there more cities, big cities, I can tell something about? So I went not as deep as some of the scholars over here, some of the researchers over here, but I did some visual research. So I traveled, and one of the cities at that time, which were very popular to photograph, was Detroit. Because this city has also a very interesting story, because in the 50s it was really the center of the big car industry, but it completely died out in a few years. So a thriving city like this in the 50s, built around cars, decades later it's just empty, with everybody's kind of become destined to live in a desolated city with no houses around, just a big infrastructure, like a huge train station, but there are no trains coming in and coming out. So you can go there as a photographer and take pictures of all these derelict buildings. I would call it ruïne porno, you know, like having old building crumbling down, which is kind of interesting, but I didn't want to go that way. Although many people made interesting books, I did decide not to do it. I did something else. I went to North Korea. I thought, okay, if I want to say something about politics, if I want to say something about the current world, if I want to say something about the ideology, maybe I should go to a big city which infrastructure says politics. In some ways it always says politics, but this is a really prime example. This is an image made by a North Korean artist, and it was, of course, it was an assignment from the government because he had to show how the utopian city of Pyongyang should look like. So this is the image of Pyongyang itself. Although I had seen a lot of images in magazine, I never had a lot of information about the city itself. So in the images it looks like this, but when you come the first time it looked like this, a bit different. And I felt like The first time, it took me a year to get the permissions. As a photographer, it was really hard, and everybody's always interested, how do you get there? So I can answer those questions later, but now I just want to continue through the visual world. And I just came into a city that's from the 50s. Nothing changed since the 50s. And the first thing they ask you to do when you come in with a camera and with the official press license, you have to pay tribute to these guys. So you go to a big hill and ask you to bow and to pay respect. And when I was there, I was thinking of a story about this place, because this is Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, father and son. And the first time they opened those two statues, they couldn't tell the difference, because they were so much alike. So they closed it up again and made new ones, one with a parka, because Kim Jong-il wore always, and the other one with a long, so you could really distinguish themselves. And constantly I try to find these kind of stories. Okay, it looks very serious, but what's actually happening here? So what followed was I went there 4 times in 4 years, because I went there, you come at the border, you have to give away your laptop, you have to give away your mobile phone, you have to give away your passports. And actually, you completely kind of lost everything, except I had my camera. The guides who picked you up, the guides will be with you forever when you're there. You have a hotel that's on an island, so they can close it off. So in some ways, it feels very safe, but in a weird way, I have to say. And the guides are also next door in the hotel. They have a room on either side of you. And I was asked to do everything digital, because the policies there, we control while shooting, not before and not after. So they completely are aware of what you did, every step you took. And that was quite a challenging, I have to say.
Did you have to delete many images?
No. Because I couldn't even create them. There's one instance, but that's on the edge of deleting. There happened some interesting stuff, I have to say. But the main thing for me was what I already knew. That's why it took 4 years to develop the story, is that just going there and taking pictures doesn't make a story at all. Because many out there went, "Ooh, it was so cool, I took pictures in North Korea." Okay, and then what? You know, that's an accomplishment. But it's like taking a sharp picture. When you know how it works, you get one. But then what's next? So first of all, I tried to focus on the architecture, because from the cradle to the grave, everything is from the government. So the government is always around you. And how do these people that live there deal with it? And slowly, during the 4 years, I was also able to take pictures of people, which is pretty hard. First of all, to get the permission. And secondly, how people behave when you have them in front of the camera. Take your picture. It goes all the time. And another thing, Salvatore, could you stand up? So he's the photographer right now, that's me, and I'm the guide. So how it practically works is you come in the country and they say, "Welcome, Mr. Hartmann. We would really advise you to take this picture because we are having the opinion that's the best angle. But maybe you should turn around because we think that angle is even better. So go through your knees." So thank you. It was not completely corona-proof, I believe.
You were probably by far the tallest person there, were you?
Some of them were pretty big, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so actually how this series came about is all about me learning how to work in a completely alien environment, which was a challenge in itself, I have to say. And I managed to take a picture of this guy smiling, which was also already, it was not very official, I have to say, but it worked.
So you learned over the years and over the visits how to deal with it.
Yes. And that's another topic. Okay, how can you create your own work when everything is so much controlled? And that in itself was a challenge. It all had to do with the editing afterwards, because within this book I published, there are like 70 images, but over the years I took hundreds of them. It's all about the selection, because I think 10% of every excursion I made came into the book, because the rest is just, I was obliged to have this group of pictures with people with all the doing synchronized stuff, kids being tortured to death to play the ultimate Mozart for you, 10 times the speed, that's normal, all those kind of things, in that sense horrible. And so I had loads of the images, but these images in between, that's the one I went for. And sometimes it really disagreed, and sometimes it worked out. This image is very important for me, because the more I worked there, the more abstract it became, which probably Salvatore liked, yeah, when it gets a bit abstract.
What does it show?
It's the birthday, the 15th of April of Kim Il-sung, the one that started the whole thing in the 50s. And this person is so incredibly holy that this is shot on his birthday, that even the date is so holy that their people have to hold the boards permanently during the day, so they wouldn't really fall over. It's like paying respect, holding on to the date. And it got more extreme and extreme and extreme. What the pictures don't show are the soundtrack of the city. Constantly you have sound on the streets. Maybe some of you saw on television this very strict lady shouting the news at you. Now that sound is constantly on the streets. So the loudspeakers are actually kind of the government that's really around, you know, it's like an entity. First people try to hide. This is the entrance of a football stadium. I didn't suspect it completely, but and this lady behind.
Germany.
Don't start that
Holy
discussion.
place.
And she's there just to start the escalator when you're, or you know, the, how you said it? Escalator? Okay.
Escalator, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything seems so deserted. Where were all the people?
That was the first question I had. So.
How many people live in Pyongyang?
Unknown. No, maybe
millions.
I should scroll to. I'll go here. So, I'm very fond of this image, and that's also the title of the series, is Setting the Stage, because you can question photography and documentary in any way already. Like how we started out is that just when you frame something, it's already an opinion. You can already have a discussion of if it's the reality or not, or what kind of opinion do you have. But if the subject itself doing the same thing with you already, then it's a double cluster complicated. So this is a bathhouse, and they call it an Olympic swimming pool they have in there. I went there 4 times every year. And 3 years there was nobody there. So every time I asked, where are the people? Yeah, you come in the wrong time. We were rebuilding. We're renovating. Somebody's ill. We cannot open the door. But the last trip, there were 3 ladies swimming in the swimming pool. And it happens to be that I turned my camera from one corner to the other corner, and I just had this in the frame. Then I heard behind me, somebody walk, and this lady was sitting in front of me, and was sitting, and I was thinking, that's a weird place to sit, like very ostentatiously, there's somebody here. Really? So that became a bit of the narrative, is that this is part of the subway, and every subway is dedicated to a speech of Kim Il-sung. So you have speech of that time. So instead of having a stop in Frankfurt Mitte, you said, I have to stop at this speech of Kim Il-sung. And that's the way how you educate people in the end. So it's not this picture, but another one we will see in a minute is that the first time I went on an excursion, I was put out a van and I was in a big square with one big monument. And then I said, where are all the people? And then the guide said to me, Mr. Hartmann, you want to take pictures of monuments? Please do. It felt like they cleared the whole thing just to have it, you know. But that's also very weird. So this is my guide. Very happily, he was in red, because of course I'm a photographer, and in that sense I'm not so much of a researcher. Of course, I have to do my research before, but I like to get my input from what's happening on the location itself. These are these happy moments that you frame the thing and just a row of people walk in the frame to get a sense of scale. Not staged. They have even their own space shuttle. It says space shuttle. And I don't want to take too long of your time showing these images because we maybe want to have some discussions too. These are images. This is one image from the Kim Il-sung Square, and this is one of the squares you see all the time in the media, and it's tiny. It's nothing compared to a big square over here. It's really tiny. But standard, they have all the lights there and all the decor props. So effectively, somebody has to pull a switch and you have the whole charade going on. So, and that's why I came also with the title, Setting the Stage, because the whole thing seems to be designed for a stage. That's why it's so empty, because it's designed for this one occasion or two occasions in a year when they have all the military out. But during the normal day, we cannot fill those streets. What I'm going to do is show a video that's partly made. Here we go. Even kijken where we are. So I also wanted to show you how it is to work there. I made a little impression, so you have an idea how it is to work there. The sound is recorded on the spot. So constantly you hear the sound of propaganda on the streets.
What was your major feeling when you worked there? I mean, you know, everything you described, the conditions, the way you lived.
Now here you can see that the guide will always check what I did every time on my screen. So this is the routine. You're picked up at a hotel, and you're just in there, and I try to make conversation to keep things light. Very important. And then you come to a location, and then you're shown there, and most of the things you are not allowed to shoot or photograph. But I had a miniature camera on my camera, which I didn't detect. So this stuff is shot while I was taking pictures. So, and like, see, they constantly surround you to kind of control if you do a step in the wrong direction. And always music. So this is in a fertilizer, they say fertilizer factory, but it is also known to make chemicals for chemical weapons. This is a material I got from a North Korean cameraman that was observing me. So these are more kind of classical black and white images. I never used them. It's just one of the trials I did.
Could you in any way choose a parkour you would make with them?
No.
No.
I tried, but maybe can mute the sounds from that, just have the video. Is that during the 4 years, I learned to deal with the guides. So first of all, you have a parcours, and then I would ask to be on the streets, and I would suggest maybe you should go that way. And then they would allow or not allow. And then when they allowed me, then I said, okay, maybe you can also turn that corner. And so you got through the whole city and seeing sometimes this is in a factory, and they had their attention somewhere else. And in the beginning say no, 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 and at a certain point you're allowed to do it. But these are more the anecdotes. Of course, in the end, it's important what you do with it. And that's why I'm very happy. That's what I already told you, that since a long time I'm really physically at a festival, really talking to people, which is very important. And curators like you and others around really help also define a story by putting other stories next to it. So your book or your story cannot live on itself. That's why these festivals are also very important.
And even for us as the curators, I mean, you select a group of works, and then you see the thread that's going, the dialogue. But at the end, when you install it, it's always a moment that things happen that were like kind of unexpected, and still you see, look what's happening here, and see the connection and how, and that's the physical art object at the end that does something that is that you cannot have.
Now here you see a video,
virtually.
because they always ask where are the people. Yeah, I couldn't find them,
And what is of course interesting for me is that we look at these are images you were allowed to bring out.
Yeah.
But we of course look at them and we see something completely different.
Yes.
So this is what passed the censorship,
Yes.
and they seem like that's good images. They show what we want
Yes.
the outside world to see, and we
Yes.
look at them in a completely different way. Like, oh my God, look at this. Where the people. I mean, already this is of course dystopian. It reminds you of novels you've read. If you see the great leaders just everywhere.
Yeah. You
It's
cannot
incredible. It's like a farce. It seems like it has like a bad comedy aspect to see those faces again and again.
Yeah, and then you also are confronted with your own perspective in that sense. Because when you come in a country, you have a certain kind of idea how things are. And obviously they play trick with you because how the things is set up. And also you question yourself. It's really us and them. But when I'm here, it's far more subtle. And sometimes we think from ordinary North Korean people, they're very obedient, but they're absolutely not. They're the ones that I met or able to meet had very strong opinions and were very, very well informed in what's going on.
That's what you told us yesterday, so that really the young people, they know what's going on outside, because this is a question that comes up automatically. How much do they know? Because they seem to be so, put on track, brainwashed, but how much do they know what's happening outside the borders?
I show one image that illustrates this a bit. So when we go to the slide again, is that you're not allowed to visit any North Korean person at his home. It is impossible. So to supply the demands, the officials build homes you can visit, which do not exist in a kind of exhibition space. So this is how we live. And so I took a series of those completely empty and interiors. But after 1 year I took these images, they were removed because they themselves feel already they cannot hold up the story anymore. And it has to do with globalization. You cannot stop it because at the border I'm stopped and they check me on propaganda in the form of books. But in my sock I can have an USB stick with thousands of gigs with television shows, which actually happen. So there's a very big smuggling route of information going in and out. So the general audience is far more involved than the officials are likely to admit.
We are running out of it. I mean, I have hundreds of questions I'd like to ask you, but now I'd like to open it up for the audience. Because maybe there are
any questions?
Yes, Paula. You could just turn on your microphone, maybe. No?
Yes, I was wondering about, as a photographer who, I assume might be interested in what is behind, like all the staged atmosphere, and wasn't it super frustrating not to get a glimpse of what happens behind? And because, of course, normally like this view of a Western photographer going to like a different country and try to see deeper behind. Yeah, was it frustrating? Did you try other ways to get closer?
I think the question is more important. What do you expect to be behind the scenes? It's more about this, and the whole problematic thing is working in North Korea. If you show your work, sometimes, especially in Holland, actually, if you come home and you don't show concentration camps in North Korea, they think it cannot be true what you do because they must be there. But that's a narrative you already know. But it is also quite obvious you will never get there. So I was more at this time interested in the show me your country. What do you think is the best part of your country? That was in my kind of you can show me what you think that's the top thing, and then you see what I come home with. Then you can only imagine how bad it even is behind this facade. So I think, in that sense, more powerful. But you already feel this is hard stuff. It's not about taking a picture of the crying kids that is poor that's on the street, but the strength of this kind of empire, so strong still to prohibit what's happening, to see what's happening behind this big curtains.
So, but you have the feeling that it kind of worked, the concept of being part of the of the staging, but always covering like something in between, because your pictures don't really like cover exactly what they wanted to show you. I had the impression that it's always like a millimeter more left or right, you know what I mean?
So of course, within this exhibition, which I'm very happy to participate with on several levels, you only can show a small amount of images. That maybe is the core, but when you see the whole project, I also have a soundscape and recordings from the street. I have a 360 video made in a subway. And then slowly the whole picture starts to come together, because that's why it also took an awful long. I don't believe in projects that come about in just a few months. That's impossible. So it took me a long time to get all the different perspectives.
I think like the most impressive moment was when you started like this video where we could hear the sound on the street, because this like kind of created this huge contrast in between what like this staged pictures and the staged scenario of the government that presented this to us, and the real maybe.
Yeah, you're missing the soundscape actually. You know, the images. That's what I noticed after 2 times. It missed the sound, it missed the video, and then I went over to make a video and different soundscapes.
I think it's a moment when you realize it's real, when you hear the sound, that it really exists. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's
once again, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much for all your explanations and for being part of this exhibition.
One more question, comments. Quick!
I just wanted to compliment you on the beginning of the talk today by showing your own family home, and you had mentioned that someone said, here we put the hand above is beautiful and perfect, and below is ugly. Yeah. And so it's a really fascinating extension to see the work in North Korea, because you're showing what's supposed to be seen and beautiful. So it's a really nice. I just wanted to say that was
I'm very
important
much
to
a
do.
fan of it. I'm also a teacher at the KBK The Hague, and there are students with beautiful concepts, beautiful ideas, very talented, but sometimes they are not able to tell it in a visual way. They have tons of text, beautiful made, but if you have an exhibition with tons of text and your visuals don't communicate, then you shouldn't use that medium. So I always have to convince myself that the visual medium is actually also in a visual way telling the story. And sometimes I need others around me to point that they cannot see the story, or sometimes they see the story. And that was the big message I got from this first series.
One quick question. Are you allowed to travel back to North Korea, or would you? Because, I mean, you made this
I don't
video.
know. I really don't know. And I had problems exhibiting in China, which was kind of disconcerting, but obvious. But to be very honest, I don't want to return anymore.
I mean...
I did it for 4 years and it's now somebody else's job. Maybe I turn in when there's a big Wende or something else going on that's interesting for me, but that's not going to be soon.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eddo.